What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another rendition of the Falcon Eye View. I guess you could say Monday edition. Here as of late, I have been really thinking about and thinking on what this run game is going to look like underneath Arthur Smith and with the backs that we have, right? Because you come into this offseason, you didn't re-sign Todd Gurley. You cut Ito Smith. You didn't re-sign Brian Hill. So what you had on the roster was Quadray Olison, which is a name we'll get into here in a little bit. But that's basically, you had Quadray Olison and you had Tony Brooks-James on the roster for the running back position, for the running back room. So as we all did going into the drafting process, man, I really started digging into the running backs that were available. Now, leading up to the draft, we signed Mike Davis from Carolina, and that gave a little bit of pop, a little bit of pizzazz, but it really lined up with everything that Terry Fontenot had been doing up to that point. He had been signing guys and players that wouldn't necessarily force his hand in the draft, and that's really what I viewed Mike Davis as. Not that he's a bad player, but I felt like he was a player that was going to be solid, but if you had a better option in the draft, you were probably going to take it. So I started looking at, obviously, pie in the sky, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne. Didn't figure you were going to take one of them unless we traded back, which obviously we didn't do. We know at this point in time we have taken Kyle Pitts. And we also know at this point in time, we didn't take any running back in the draft. Not with any of our draft selections. We didn't pick up Javonte Williams in a second. He was there for us, if I'm not mistaken. We didn't pick up Chuba Hubbard. We didn't pick up my guy, Rhamondre Stevens, which I'll get into that here in just a minute. But needless to say, we didn't pick up any back, not in the draft. Now, we picked up two backs since the draft has ended, and Jayvon Hawkins and Caleb Huntley, two highly touted undrafted free agent, well, at least one. Jayvon Hawkins had a third-round grade on him on a lot of different sites. So to get him undrafted, not having to spend any draft capital, that's a pretty big get. And that's a guy we're definitely going to talk about here in a minute. But so I got to thinking, by not drafting any running backs, what does that say about our running back situation? It reminded me of a quote that Arthur Smith said when he first got hired. Somebody had asked him about Derrick Henry, coming off that 2,000-yard season. And Arthur Smith said, look, I'm not, we know that there's not another Derrick Henry. And in a way, he was trying to say, I'm not coming to Atlanta trying to recreate exactly what I had in Tennessee. That's obvious by drafting freak of nature unicorn Kyle Pitts at number 4. If you want to go, oh, well, he had Jonnu Smith. Kyle Pitts outstrips Jonnu Smith in probably every aspect, maybe blocking. So for, Arthur Smith to make those comments saying that he's not trying to recreate what he had in Tennessee, that really got me thinking about the scheme. He said, that they were going to go by committee and that hopefully that the scheme was going to produce. So that got me thinking about, what is the scheme? The scheme, in all intents and purposes, is zone blocking. Now, I've heard some people think about or, ponder on the fact, is it going to be zone with a mixture of power? I'm sure it is. Every NFL team has all of it in there. You'd be silly not to have it all at your disposal. But it's, what do you focus on, right? We get focused on, what is it, a 3-4 or 4-3, even though the vast majority of the time you're playing in nickel or dime. Same deal on the offense. We get focused on whether it's zone or man or power or what have you. They all have it all, but there's something that's going to be a focus more so than any other part of the scheme. And by all accounts that we can see, and maybe even by some quotes that I'm not pulling to mind right now, it's going to be a zone blocking scheme. It's going to have wide zone, inside zone. It's going to have split zones. So, like, the zone blocking scheme is going to be dominant in the play calling. I'm sure they're still going to have powers, and I'm sure they're going to have, man blocking and all those stuff. But the vast majority of the time, it's going to be a zone blocking. And zone blocking, that idea really sent me down a rabbit hole preparing for this video, trying to, freshen up, so to speak, on the zone concepts and things of that nature, how it was used in Tennessee and how it may end up being used here and how it could potentially benefit the running back group that we have. So right now, I'm just going to throw up a picture. Now, this picture is just a diagram of some of the, inside outside zones. It even has, a power play or so in there. But this is some of the blocking that you can look to see coming this year. Okay, if you look at that first diagram, that inside zone, what you're not really seeing in that diagram is the running back has the opportunity to take it three different ways inside that inside zone. He could bounce it outside, bend it up in the middle, or cut it back. So these are just some of the initial plays that you might see, that our running backs take. The outside zone is something we should all be familiar with in Kyle Shanahan's time here. If you go and watch any tape from Tennessee, you'll see a good bit of that. That was something that Derrick Henry excelled at because of his balance and his vision allowed him to, make full advantage of that outside zone. A lot of people feel like an outside zone is more for like a one cut and go back, kind of like a Tevin Coleman. But it can benefit any running back, and it can definitely benefit a running back that has the patience and the vision to make it work. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the things that I was looking at, right? I'm not really going to get into any kind of like Mike Davis tape because I feel like he's the known commodity of this group. He had over 1,000 all-purpose yards at Carolina last year. One of the few like alarming things that may be about Mike Davis is that he tapered off towards the end of the season. Now that could be due to the fact that he wasn't used to that kind of load, or the fact that Joe Brady up there in Carolina started falling in love with the idea of using Curtis Samuel as a running back as well to further confuse defenses. So the scheme could have been a lot to do with why he tapered off. I'll be very curious to see how he performs here in Atlanta, because right now he is clearly your number one back. I was initially thinking that they were going to draft somebody who could come in and challenge Mike Davis for that number one spot, and by the end of the season may be the number one back. But to me, Mike Davis is clearly your number one back right now, barring any other moves. So what we're going to do is we're going to start going down like the order, I guess you could say, in the draft room. The first person that I'm going to start with is the one that I'm actually most excited about, and that's Quadray Olison. Now, if any of y'all follow me on Twitter, y'all saw, a couple days ago I put up a thread of plays by Quadray Olison when he was in Pitt that make me excited about what he could do here, because I really feel like Quadray Olison got dealt a bad hand. Initially when he got drafted, he was being used as our short yardage back and was excelling at that. I mean, I think he'd had 4 touchdowns his rookie year. So, but then, 2019, 2020, that's what it was, we signed Todd Gurley, the PR move, Todd Gurley, and he basically took whatever snaps Quadray Olison was going to have. Because, he could be more of a power back and had a real good nose for the end zone, stuff like that. And you're paying him almost $4 million. Of course, you're going to put him on the field. But by season's end, you saw how that experiment went. He was benched for Ito Smith, and it became the Ito Smith Brian Hill show. Which, when you have a OC who could care less about the run game and the way Cutter was, it didn't surprise me that Quadray Olison quickly became an afterthought. Now, given the fact that he was the only back left on the roster by this new regime, that gives me a little bit of hope that maybe, just maybe, he can carve out a role. Because at like 6'2", 230, he's a bigger back. And, I feel like if there's a back on this roster that could give you some of the skill set that Derrick Henry gave you, I really feel like it's Quadray Olison. So we're going to get into this this one of the plays. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time showing you actual plays, and that's only because YouTube likes to ding us on that. So we're going to see if I can get away with it. But what I want you to notice here, pay attention to the line, see how they flow in a zone. You can tell it's a zone run because the entire line will shift to one side or the other. All right, you'll see the entire line go almost parallel to the goal line. And watch Quadray Olison. He starts one way, and then his vision and cut brings him back another. So I'm going to show you this play right here. See it? He starts one way and then cuts it back, which could be a counter call, or it could be his vision. So I want to show you all that one more time. He comes in and cuts it back, and he's got good vision and good bursts. That's something that really intrigued me about Quadray Olison, is that his vision, and he's got good bursts. Now, he doesn't have, long speed, so he's not a home run threat from anywhere on the field, but I think he could be that bruising back. Now, remember also up in Tennessee, if you're wanting to compare what they did up there to what we might do down here, is there for a while, Arthur Smith was trying to use Derrick Henry and Dante Foreman as a 1-2 punch, like both big physical backs. So I can definitely see Quadray Olison carving out a good role and hopefully becoming the RB2 in this committee, because I really think that there's a lot that he could give you. Now, another guy that's on this roster that is listed as a running back that I initially just cast off and didn't think nothing about it, because I was like, okay, well, he's a kick returner, and that's Cordell Patterson. Now, the reason why I bring him up is because they listed him as a running back. Okay, so here's another big back, 6'4", 238. That's a big dude. Okay, that's approaching Derrick Henry size. All right, and so I was like, okay, he's just a kick returner, a gadget player at best, wide receiver that didn't necessarily pan out, bounced around the league as a kick returner, but what caught me and made me think about it is that we have him listed as a running back. So I did a little bit more digging, and in Chicago, he played running back a decent amount. I mean, to the tune of probably about 300-400 yards carrying, a touchdown or two. I'd pull up his stats, but I don't want to, take the time, so to speak, right this minute. And I can't recall them right off the top of my head. But I did watch his game against Detroit where he had 67 yards rushing. And what really looked like is it looked like you gave a punt returner the ball. I mean, he was running like it's a punt returner. I'm just going to show you, okay? Let's see. All right, there he is, 84 in the backfield, lined up, right? I love he just stops and goes a different direction. It doesn't necessarily look smooth and natural like he's been a running back his whole life, because he hasn't. A lot of his runs looked a lot like that. And I'll show you that again. All right. And again, like I said, I hope we don't get dinged for this because it's too much fun. He just, going to go back this way. It just seems it is going to be interesting to see how Arthur Smith uses him, if he actually gives him some carries. It could be a deal where, because of his experience as a wide receiver, he could be your RB2 and use him in multiple different ways. But Cordell Patterson does represent an interesting option. All right, now at this point, that's the guys who have professional experience. That's the, Mike Davis, Quadray Olison, Cordell Patterson. That's your experienced wide receiver room or running back room right now. Now, let's get into one of the undrafted free agents. Now, one of them was Caleb Huntley. I couldn't find a lot of film on him, to be completely honest, coming out of Ball State. I think he got injured last year, so he wasn't able to finish out a season. What film I was able to see on him, he has an unorthodox running style to where he's a big guy, hard to bring down. Some people are comparing him to Jerome Bettis. So he doesn't very rarely go down to the first contact. So a lot of times you'll see him spin and basically start running backwards and kind of plowing his way that way. But Caleb Huntley could be an interesting if he comes in healthy. I just don't, with the competition that he had to play against and the fact that he is a one-note back. I mean, he's a bruising, downhill running running back. You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily see a big role for him. But hey, I could be wrong, and I'll be happy to be wrong. But that brings me to our last person I want to talk about, Jayvon Hawkins. Now, Jayvon Hawkins initially put on his tape, and I was like, okay, this is a right up under, 200-pound guy, 189, 190 some odd pound guy, 5'8", just kind of more your scat back, speed back guy. But the part that really grabbed me, the part that was really interesting, is the fact that his offensive coordinator is now our offensive line coach. Dwayne Ledford was the offensive coordinator / offensive line coach at Louisville, which is probably one of the reasons why we ended up with Jayvon Hawkins, to be completely honest. The familiarity with Hawkins and Ledford probably made it for an easy decision for him. And by all accounts that we've seen and read, he was a high priority on the Falcons list. So, with Ledford having inside knowledge on Hawkins, it makes a lot of sense that they went after him real early in the undrafted free agent process. So when I started watching him, it was watching him for two reasons. One, Ledford, being our offensive line coach, has a in-depth knowledge at the zone blocking scheme. You can see it all over Louisville's offensive line. And so that gets me kind of hyped there. So that tells me that Hawkins is already used to running in that style of scheme. So that painted a new light when looking at Hawkins. All right, so one of the first ones I want to show you here is an outside zone run by Hawkins. Okay, he bounces this thing outside, and it's just a real nice, good, smooth run. You see that O-line? And he just goes. I mean, he's quick. Like, I think his speed will keep him on this roster, his speed and his vision. As long as he comes in and does what they ask him to do, I believe Hawkins is going to carve out a role. I initially think he'll start out as a RB3 and, potentially work his way up to either RB1 or RB2. I mean, I think he's got a lot of upside in what he brings to the table. I'm going to show you all this one more time. Like, this is a really nice run. I mean, he's got good vision there, cuts it up, and just gets going. I mean, just a really good, solid run. Now, I want to show you this touchdown here that he runs it in, and this is an inside zone where he bends it outside, or bends out. He first starts to bang it up, and then follows his blocks, and is just in the end zone. It's such a beautiful run. I love it. I love that O-line. I'm going to show you all this in a different one. You can see they get that zone going. All right, so speaking of that O-line and that what we can come to expect, our O-line to potentially perform like, watch this. This is the same play that I just showed you, but this is in super slow motion. I want you to watch the offensive line in this play. See how they all just step, all of them just go lateral, right? It's such a good play. Let's see, I'm going to back it up a little bit. Let's see here. I want y'all to see this. There. Right. Okay. So you all just, bam. They all just step. They block up their guy. The seal block on the end by the tight end creates a real nice hole for Hawkins just to scamper in. And with his speed and vision, it makes it real easy for him to turn off some real good runs. So out of this whole group, I came in not really expecting much out of Hawkins, but he's the one that's got me excited. Like, it wouldn't surprise me one bit by the end of the season if you had, Quadray Olison and Jayvon Hawkins being solid contributors to this, running back group. I think Mike Davis is going to give you some solid production, solid running. He's got real good vision. He is a professional, been in the league for a while. You can trust in the pass block, which is going to be a big thing. So I think Mike Davis cements himself as running back one, but I don't necessarily think he's all like going to just blow you away. I think those kind of runs could come from Hawkins or Quadray Olison, the ones that I'm truly excited about. Now, the wild card could be Patterson, depending on how coach wants to use him. Like if it's a deal where he's, designing stuff where you got Patterson out wide in an empty set and then bring him in to the running back position or vice versa to create different looks, that could be fun and interesting. But as it stands right now, I think your running back production is going to come from Mike Davis. But I'm really going to be watching Quadray Olison and Javian Hawkins and see if they can move themselves up the depth chart. But this zone blocking scheme is real cool, real interesting. If y'all ever get a chance, I would highly suggest you do some digging on it. But that's it for me today. I appreciate y'all giving me the time. As always, y'all can follow me on Twitter, Grim1128. We got a Patreon that we launched over the draft weekend. If y'all want to subscribe to that, it gives you access to a pound for pound only group chat, and will give you access to exclusive videos that we do in the future. So if y'all want to check that out, just go to Patreon /P4P ATL. As always, Falcons fans, rise up.